I've been listening to this album, Sacred Treasures of the Russian Orthodox Church. It's pretty amazing. I was just listening to one of their hymns, and it felt almost like a womb giving birth. And it dawned on me that that spirituality is about giving birth, and that the light is about giving birth. For instance, if I talk about Ouspensky, when he talks about the law of three, I was reading this last week. When he talks about the law of three, he says the active and passive forces are both active. And the way he talks about it, it's as if you've got three bodies there, active, passive, and neutralizing. And these three bodies are going to work together, like in the United Nations, to make something. That's the way Ouspensky thinks about it. And when he talks about the Enneagram, he says that you should really consider 3 Enneagrams, a higher one, a lower one, and a middle one, and they're kind of connected. You see, he doesn't understand anything. He doesn't understand in ancient folklore, there was this idea that things could materialize in mid-air. They could be born out of nowhere. Miraculous things could happen. What is all that stuff about? You see, the entirety of human society is not giving birth. It is only giving birth that is the light. In the law of three, there is only 2. There is the active and the passive, and they struggle together, and something appears out of nowhere and bridges. It goes through them. It goes through them. Something appears out of nowhere. Now, human beings sometimes call this love or sex, according to which story it's going through. And they like it. I mean, love and sex is what they like to talk about. They like it when something appears out of nowhere, because then they feel alive. But Ouspensky is still at the United Nations with 3 bodies trying to work it out. What is the meaning of the Holy Spirit? It's also an attempt to explain something that appears out of nowhere. That is, that just suddenly appears. Instead, Ouspensky, when he's struggling with difficult questions, then he does what most people do, who are mental people, is they make it more complicated. You see, everything that we want has to appear magically. It has to be born. And it is born according to our magical courage. Something between sincerity, courage, magic, letting go, will. Somewhere inside there is a magical river. You see? Like all these people who are, at the United Nations and they're organizing things. These people are all living in death. The entire thing is death. because there is nothing flowing through them. When people think about problems, they think just like Ouspensky. They say, I've got 5 pieces, and let me add 3 more pieces, and then I've got 8 pieces, and maybe I can rearrange them. But the entire thing is dead. Nothing is appearing out of nowhere. You basically start with 8 pieces and you end with 8 pieces. This is wrong. You have to start with 8 pieces and end with 100 pieces that appear out of nowhere. It is like the feeding of the 5,000. You start with a few loaves and suddenly out of nowhere there's just loaves everywhere. Where from? They appear out of nowhere because somewhere in the middle of sincerity, courage, earnestness, modesty, straightforwardness, hope, magic, somewhere in there is a magical river. And the world as we know it, the world that human beings describe, is all a question of shuffling 8 pieces and being left with 8 pieces at the end. Basically, whatever is here has spread out to create a sort of self-stable matrix. Like once something is created in the universe, it doesn't instantly die. It sort of becomes stable according to the Heptaparaparshinok. It sort of tries to maintain itself. And everything we see in the world is basically what exists already in human society is trying to sort of maintain itself. It's trying to hold together. It's trying to hold together what has been already achieved. Right? And this sort of slowly shuffling stuff around that we see in our society, that's what it is. They are not creating anything new. For human beings to evolve, something has to start to appear out of nowhere through them because of their understanding, their inward, energetic comprehension of how to be. If you talk about the church and what it means to have faith, love and hope, it means the feeling of the inner flow of the inner river. And those ancient chants that are kept alive in holy countries, they are trying to, they help you to feel something. Gurdjieff understood the inner working more than most, you know. Now here's something interesting, is that the idea of the octave, if it completes, that it generates something, then you are generating from something that already exists, whereas the law of 3 generates a new entity. So they're both generative. There are 2 ways of generating things. I am not quite sure if I understand the octave properly, because my training is coming more from the Chinese arts. However, Gurdjieff did say that the only people who had ever really understood the octave were the Chinese. But I cannot confirm it more than that. But what I do know is that when you're looking at the Enneagram, you know, I was in the shower today and I was thinking about this Enneagram and Ouspensky's nonsense, his sort of square thinking about it. the way to solve the Enneagram, I think it must be more something like Gandalf will do. But anyway, the problem, of course, with all these things is that human beings, they are not a unity. They're a big mess inside. So if anybody is going to understand these things, they have to do the inner work, especially in the Triamesocamno. If not, you cannot feel it inside yourself. And if you cannot feel it inside yourself, you cannot verify and validate anything. To verify and validate anything simply means that I can feel it inside my own Triamesocamno. I can feel the flow of forces inside my guts. So in terms of the world and so on, the only thing that would save human beings is if people were able to make the magic river flow inside of them. But these days I don't think people care if they die. All this is, Gurdjieff said that everything starts on a higher level. All the discussions that you hear are simply people who begin with 8 pieces and end with 8 pieces. There are very few who are giving birth to anything. And the few that do new things, most of them are simply selling themselves to the devil in desperation, because it's easier. It's easier, or it seems to be easier. One very reliable thing you can do, as I've said, is to do. In other words, to confront yourself with real work that you cannot do without instructions to force you to be reduced